Hi, welcome back to my channel. This is Psychic Medium Raymond Guzman, and today I'm going to be doing a celebrity psychic reading, mediumship reading, and psychic reading on Miss Sylvia Browne. May she rest in peace, this lovely, beautiful lady. And I do this reading as being requested by a lot of my viewers, and I'm doing it from a place of love and respect for Miss Browne in her memory and for her family that is still alive. So where do I start? For those of you that are tuning in, I can't imagine, maybe the younger generations that are tuning in may not know who Sylvia Browne was, but she was a world-renowned psychic, and she appeared numerous times on the show that would come out in the 90s, in the early 2000s as well, called the Montel Williams Show, and she was like the resident psychic for that show. And I believe for a certain amount of segments she would come out for a certain amount of time, a couple of years. She would come out once a month or once every week. I can't remember the way it was, but I remember when I was younger during the summer months that I would see her on the show, and I would look at that at the Montel Williams show, and excuse me, and I was always so intrigued by her and her psychic abilities. Me being a starseed as a child, I always had a fascination for everything psychic, psychic and magic and all the good stuff that, that almost like Harry Potter in many ways. So I was always fascinated to see all of that she had to say. And it wasn't until I think after her death, and some scandals around her that I actually began to get a little much stronger in my spiritual path and really understand now that I'm older and I'm in my 30s, and I understand who she was and her mission and her purpose. So I hope my goal here is to serve her memory and pay her homage, because I have a lot of respect for her, but my reading is not biased in any kind of way, because I am setting aside all of my feelings and etc. to just deliver and channel from messages from her and my spirit guides and the angels. So who was Sylvia Browne? Like I said, she was a psychic, she was a mother, she was a spiritual teacher here on earth. Her mission here, I feel like her life purpose, what I'm getting from her soul, was to elevate consciousness. That was her primary goal, and she did this through the means of using her platform. She used her platform on TV and through books and writing and speaking events and readings to help bring healing into the world and elevate consciousness. Now you have to understand that she is a pioneer. She is someone like a lot of those that came before her, the Fox sisters, and all the other psychic mediums that were in the world before Sylvia Browne. But she came at a pivotal time when we were gravitating and shifting to 3D, and the new age, the new earth was forming, and consciousness was being elevated and raised throughout the world. So she came during a time that people still were closed-minded. She faced a lot of darkness throughout her years before becoming, well known on TV and famous, and being world known. But she worked her butt off, and I say that very respectfully. She was not someone who just, rose to fame through the Montel Williams show. Even if Montel Williams, that show opportunity wouldn't have arisen, she would have still made a name for herself, and she was making a name for herself, and she had made a name for herself, because that was her goal. That was her life purpose here on earth. Everything was destined, and her blueprint was destined to have this fame, but it came at a price, and it also was to raise consciousness here on earth. And she did this through, like I said, through her books. She wrote several books, like tons of books, and she had several, teaching classes, and she would travel all around the world. She worked with famous celebrities. She did a lot of charitable work too. She was someone that was really to be admired, but I don't feel like the people at the time that, that she was very active in the psychic industry, that she was well respected, and people didn't appreciate who Sylvia Browne was. Those that were closest to her and her, the social circle the people that would have been in the spiritual community did have a deep appreciation for her gift. A lot of people, look at the scandals that surrounded her closer to her death, which I'll discuss that in a minute. But when you're a psychic medium, or you're a public figure, or you're anyone that is in the public eye, people are going to hold you to a higher standard. They forget in many ways that they forget that you have a human side, and that there is humanity, and that no one is perfect, and that we all have our flaws. And Sylvia worked through a lot of these issues from her, her near-death experiences. She had several of those in her younger years, and up until, the age that she passed, which was 77. And that's another thing that I'm going to cover in this reading. Why, she chose to exit. Her soul was destined to exit at the age of 77. But I do get, that she is in a good place right now. I feel like she is a teacher on the other side, and she is with her soulmate on the other side, on the spiritual side. So she's very happy and content. And she is very proud of what she's accomplished here. You have to remember, when we leave the physical realm, we don't take the money with us. We don't take the fame with us. All that we take with us is our soul, and all the good karma and bad karma that we did here on this earth. And I feel like she fulfilled her mission and her life purpose here on earth. But early on in her adulthood, I feel like she always felt different. She never felt like she fit in with anyone. She knew she was different. I actually feel like she had a lot of star being connections to another planet, and she spoke about this in her book, about Atlantis and all the other planetary beings and spiritual beings. But I feel like she was actually a Pleiadian. I feel like she was very much connected to that in a past life for her, and her soul was very unique. And she knew, I don't feel like she knew that, she didn't know that she was going to be destined for fame, and that she would actually go into psychic work. I feel like she was doing something way before that, with finances and doing other things, in her early life. But she never really understood her gift. It took a lot of loss and a lot of changes and a lot of pain around her love life for her to really grasp and fully embrace who she was as far as a psychic is concerned, and her spiritual work here on earth. And near-death experiences do that to you. They actually change you. It makes you, I know when I had mine afterwards, I knew my purpose, and it was to do this spiritual work as well. So, near-death experiences, they change you in a completely manner. And sometimes you can have more than one. I've only had one. So, some people have 2 or 3 within their lifetime. And each time that you have it, it's like an assessment of your soul. And you're being recalibrated in many ways. And a part of you dies, but you're still alive. But a part of your soul dies and is reborn in a new, it's like transforming and ascending. So very much I see that, she went through these darker periods of depression. She would have had a lot of heartache, and it made her a strong woman. Some people would say that she was, very bold, and she would just tell you like the way it is. But you have to understand the way that the shows were scripted, and some of it was scripted. I feel like the producers of the Montel Williams show, when they first cast her as the resident psychic, that they had this idea that they wanted to kind of change her image and project her to be something different than what she, and she fought back. I feel like she did fight back, and she had a lot of, deep discussions with Montel and the producers of the show, and told them, hey, I'm real. I am a real person. I want to be portrayed this way, not the way that they were wanting, because I feel almost like they were trying to get her to, instead of, like doing live readings there, maybe like they wanted to get more into her personal life, and that's where she kind of drew her line. Like maybe the camera's following her and seeing her in her home or in places doing readings in her office, and she wanted to kind of keep that part away because of the privacy issues with clients, obviously, and just people are nosy in this world. Just let's face it, people are nosy and they want to know other people's business. And I feel like she was the subject of a lot of hate by religious groups, and there was a lot of discrimination against her for being a female psychic in particular, and for speaking her mind. And a lot of people, like I said, when they come to psychics, sometimes they have an expectation and they want things sugar coated. But Sylvia was a straight shooter. She was someone who just gave it to you like spirit gave it to her. And I feel like that's, what people can't sometimes handle the truth. And I see that with myself a lot of times, when I'm giving personal readings, that a lot of times people or may not be exactly happy with the information that I give them, but I never am going to sugarcoat what I see. If you're paying a psychic to get told whatever you want to hear, rather than what could possibly be the real outcome or what's going to happen, then there's no point in coming to a psychic. Because if you're coming to a psychic, you need to be very open-minded in it. But I feel like that was what some of the adversities that she experienced, and a lot of jealousy in the spiritual community from other psychics as well during her time. But she had this resilience, and she had this this ability to just push through all of that. But her life wasn't perfect. In the confines of her home, I see her, crying, throwing things, upset, angry. The emotions, that anyone that is an empath would be doing, because she was a very strong psychic medium, but also an empath. In many ways, she felt deeply other people's pain. So, she's human. The image that was projected on the Montel Williams show was a very strong, confident psychic. But apart from that, when we look at Sylvia as the person in her personal space, what I get from her soul is that she was a real down-to-earth mom. She did things, that everybody does: get up, make some breakfast, and, she did all these things. And she wanted also, she didn't want to sacrifice her privacy in many ways when she did reach a certain level of fame, but she knew that was the price to pay. You're not going to always be happy. And I feel like her work took a toll on her relationships and her love life. Some of the men that she would have been in relationships with, they wouldn't have been able to handle her energy. Even though there were soulmates or twin flames, they tried to control her image, or they didn't like the things that maybe she said. And that's the bad thing about, being a psychic medium, is that many times when you have a partner, that people won't necessarily embrace you, or your family will disown you if they're not aware of your spiritual path, or they'll try to control you or deter you from your path. So I feel like many people came into her life to change her path from the spiritual path as a psychic, and change her to something else, make her change her way, make her doubt herself. And for a short period of time, I feel like she battled depression and coping with other mechanisms as well, and I feel like she spoke about this in on the shows and on the books, so that's well known. But I feel like it goes deeper. It goes way deeper, and it affected her marriages, and it affected the love relationships that she would have had to a certain degree, and that created a state of unhappiness and depression for her. And she felt like at one time, why am I doing so much servitude to the world and giving so much of myself and sacrificing who I am, for happiness, for living a normal life. But she knew that this was a mission. This was a gift that was given from God. It was a special gift to share with the world. So she embraced it, and she kind of pushed past the resistance, essentially ascending to the next level in her spiritual path. So I get that, she was someone that was admired by many people and still is admired. And when I tune into her soul, the message for Chris, her son, who is also a very talented psychic, is that she loves him. She says, Mama loves you. And she's also saying that she is sorry that he had to deal with all the negative energy, after her passing. But it all happened, she says, as it was destined to, and that she doesn't regret one single thing that she did here on earth. The only thing that she would change, if she could, would have been to maybe show more love to herself, because I feel like she was so selfless and giving. And she says that she never put herself first. She always put others. She was always giving to people. But this, again, would not have been shown on TV. A lot of people wouldn't have seen that, and if they did see it, they just didn't. They were, oblivious and judgmental and harsh on this lady. But Sylvia was, like I said, a pioneer, and she's saying that for Chris to remember his childhood and her carrying him in the good moments that she shared with him. And she keeps showing me the beach. So I don't know if she would go to the beach a lot with you, Chris, if you're listening to this. But this is a very special message. And for the grandchildren, she loves and adores all her grandchildren. And she has a message for Montel as well. And for Montel, she's saying that sometimes they butted heads, and she knew she was as stubborn as a mule, but she thanks him for his friendship and for his unconditional loyalty. And even when the producers wanted to maybe stop, get rid of her and stop her from being on the show, she thanks Montel for his loyalty to her and for always keeping her in high regard. And those are the messages that I get from Sylvia for the family and for the special people in her life, in particular. I don't want to get too in depth with that, but she has a lot of love in her heart, and I feel like she was heartbroken and disappointed constantly. It was a constant battle to, even though she was such an evolved being and being here in the physical world, we are all human. We're all struggling with 3D consciousness, and it was a constant battle to elevate her vibration and to stay in that state of, helping others without, sacrificing some of her personal family time and some of her, her joy of doing things, traveling the world like she would have, wanted to. So she was, like I said, her mission, when you embark on a spiritual path, a lot of times it's a lot selfless. And you don't have time to really enjoy the pleasures of life like a lot of people would. But she knew she reached the fame, she reached the fortune, she had the money, she's telling me she experienced every aspect that she needed. She experienced love. She experienced what it is to be famous. She experienced the pain, the price of fame. She experienced the wisdom. She was guided by ascended masters. There were teachers like Buddha. Saint Germain was working specifically with her, and a lot of the other spiritual teachers on the other side to deliver the messages and the knowledge of the Akashic records and all the other areas, the other cities like Atlantis, the Bermuda Triangle, and all these things in her books and her teachings. And that she was guided through darkness. There was a lot of darkness that surrounded her. She was guided through it with her soul, with the illumination of the divine feminine and the divine masculine in her. She was actually a male in one of her past lives. Now I don't remember that being discussed in her books, but maybe she discussed it in one of the books. I didn't read all her books because at the time I was young. But I did read some of her books. But I know that in this world, before she passed, she was vibrating very much in her. She operated out of her divine masculine, meaning that she carried the vibration of the male duality of herself. And that was more prevalent in her business dealings, in her readings, and the way that she carried herself. She had to be strong in the world of a male-dominated world, especially in the early 90s and into the early 2000s, in this world where everything was changing and people were being so judgmental and trying to tear her and make her look like a fake. And it wasn't like that. I feel a lot of sabotage around her career. People who would get readings, and it was all to tear her career apart. There was a lot of people, like I said, people in power who didn't like that she knew things about them, and they wanted to tear her down and fabricate this whole lie about Sylvia Browne. So I'm getting that, she had a lot of choices to do, and a lot of things that she would have experienced. I almost get like I said, she's telling me, and I get that her son is also going through some of these effects. She doesn't want him to worry about embracing his psychic path. I feel like in many ways what he saw his mom go through kind of has defined, and he sees it in his own kids right now. He sees the psychic abilities. It's passed on through generations. But Chris, if you're listening to this, you just need to know that your mom loves you 100% and unconditionally, and that you are destined to be as great as her and to take on this path. So if you feel like you've deterred from this path for whatever reason, you need to, keep continuing to do the work. But but she is your guiding force, and she is very much around you, and I know that you feel her as well. That's the message that I'm getting from that. But I feel like, around her teachings and the things that she did, she's going to continue to always be known as this great spiritual teacher, regardless of, what happened as far as her predicting that someone had passed and they were found later alive. Like I said, I feel like there's a lot of misconstrued to the story. I feel like there's a lot of lies around that, to fabrications to basically tear her image down. A lot of people didn't like Sylvia. They didn't like it because, like I said, she was a teacher. She was someone who was brought here to earth with a purpose, with a very special purpose to enlighten people, help souls find healing, and elevate consciousness. And when you are a teacher and you're someone like Sylvia Browne, darkness sees you and they are hungry to tear you apart because they want the truth to be withheld. They want the world to vibrate on their level of consciousness, which is a darker level. And she was fearless. I feel like she didn't have any fear. She knew that this was coming at some point in her career, where they were going to create a scandal and try to, tear her down as one of the world's top psychics in the world. But people who would have had readings from Sylvia, people who would have known her, they know that that's not true. And no psychic is 100% accurate. Not even myself. Like I said, we're all human. This is a God-given ability, and we only can know what we are allowed to see and what we're allowed to connect to, and what spirit wants us to see. So, it's like I said, there's a big gray space when it comes to the world of psychics and mediums and spirituality, where people may not embrace who we are. But her message, I'm getting another message here where she's saying that her goal is for all of her followers that still remember her to embrace who they are, be your authentic self. She's saying that the world is going to continue to elevate in consciousness, and there's going to be more teachers. And I feel like she's not going to come back. One of her souls is like one of her purposes is not to reincarnate, but to stay as a teacher in the spiritual realm and work now as she's acclimated, and enjoy her life with her soulmate, and ultimately be happy as the light being that she is. She returned back home and is safe and happy. But her message for all the light workers that are coming out and awakening right now, and those of us that are on a spiritual path, and those that are to come still, that are being born, is to be strong and to stay in a vibration of love and unconditional compassion for humanity, and show love to your brothers and sisters. She's saying that as the earth continues to grow and it gets older, that there is going to be everything that she did predict. It is going to be occurring. It may not be in the exact time frames that she had documented, but it is coming, and it's part of the new earth and the new consciousness that we are in, the new vibration. If you notice, there's a lot of more spiritual shows on the TV. There's a lot of famous psychic mediums on TV. There's a lot more books and psychic mediums and people that are just embarking and leaving their career as a lawyer or a nurse, or leaving other careers behind to embrace a career of Reiki, of psychic work, of spiritual work, of shamanism, and embarking in this elevated consciousness that is much higher than what we can even interpret at this time. And she's showing me the flower of life and the sacred geometry and how it all was immersed in her core of her DNA and what she was doing. So she's showing me the color purple. I'm getting the color purple, and a lot of this sacred geometry being shown in strong connections to again, the Ascended Masters. I see the color purple, and I see Saint Germain's face. So she was working highly with Saint Germain. He was like guiding her. In many ways, it makes me wonder, if if she saw him at one time, and maybe she discussed this with Chris. I don't know if she ever discussed this openly, but Saint Germain was definitely around her very strongly. And she is saying that her health, the reason that she chose to pass her soul chose to exit at the age of 77, was due to the fact that that number was very special for her. 77 is the vibration of love, and it's the vibration of a spiritual teacher, someone who's come to earth with a very important mission to teach others love, unconditional love and compassion for themselves, and to help others awaken, and for them to embrace the ultimate state of ascension. That's what it's coming. That's what I'm hearing her say. So even though she had her physical self when she was here on earth had predicted her death to be around, I don't know, in her 80s, 87 or 88. I don't remember exactly what her projected, but I remember it was supposed to be, she had said or predicted that she would probably pass a couple in her 80s. But I do get strongly that her soul actually chose the different exit. We have choice to exit at different times in our life, even though it's all blueprinted, but we have a choice to exit at a certain different phases and different ages. And she chose 77 because it was a very powerful number and very tied with her work. But she came and she conquered, and she did what she was supposed to do. She elevated consciousness. She spread unconditional love and compassion, and she awakened the eyes of many people who didn't understand and that were skeptic of psychic abilities. And she gave strength for future generations to embrace this path, the spiritual path. So in many ways, she has helped a lot of people who saw her, who were teenagers and that were going through light code activations and going through near-death experiences themselves. She helped people who were suicidal, mothers, single mothers, and people who had lost their family members. She was someone who completed her destiny, and that is what she wants to leave, her destiny, and she wants everyone to remember for her selfless work and for her good work that she left here, and she's not sad about it. It was nothing but celebration and joy to be completed, and know that she carried out her mission so passionately and so beautifully. It was like the rhythm of the spheres is what I keep hearing, the rhythm of the spheres. I don't know exactly. I've heard of the spheres, but it's something with the higher planes of consciousness and the grid work. But she was part of the rhythm of the spheres, and somehow with all her work, it created music. And I know this sounds very weird to even say, but in some way this may make sense to some people. It may not, but I'm giving you exactly what I'm hearing from her. And she says that it created music in many ways in the lives of other people through her teachings, through her books, through her, her downs and lows. People lived cathartically through her. Whatever she experienced in her life, people could relate to Sylvia Browne because they either were in the same boat as her, just they may have not been famous, but mothers, daughters, aunts and uncles and males, she helped people embrace who they are, not to be afraid of the afterlife, because there is an afterlife and there is more to this physical realm and this world than we know. So everyone that would be tuning into this was my message and my reading for Sylvia Browne. I feel like it was very powerful. I'm at the verge of crying because it is very emotional for me because I feel all of that she is delivering is so beautiful. It's a very beautiful message. So this is one of my longest readings. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If you did like this reading, please give it a thumbs up. I send my love out to her family and big hugs. And if you haven't checked out my book, please go ahead and check out my book. It's available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. It's called Starseed Footsteps. I did sell out of the book, so congratulations to me. I'm very happy about that and very grateful to all of you that bought it and that plan on buying it. And so they are planning on restocking. So if you go and order it and it shows a projected shipment date of 1 to 2 months, that is just tentatively. But as soon as they get it back in restock, which should be soon, that will be subject to change. So blessings and love and light. Thank you so much for being here.